Scoliosis refers to a curvature of the spine, and the most common group of children with this are young adolescents, which is around age 10 to 13. And the interesting thing about scoliosis is we don't, to this day, know exactly what causes it. So we often use the word idiopathic scoliosis, meaning we don't know the cause. We do know that it's related to genetics. It does tend to run in families, although the severity doesn't. We now even have a genetic test based on a saliva sample that helps give us an idea about whose curve is going to get bigger. And that's sort of the problem with scoliosis. Small curves generally are common in about 6 or 7% of the population, and they generally don't cause a problem. But in about 1%, the curve will sometimes go from a small curve to a big curve. And these are the ones that need treatment. So identifying who's going to get a bigger curve is very helpful. So you can see a genetic test that would predict whether your curve was going to require more aggressive treatment would be helpful.
Hi, I'm Virginia Harvey, and in 2008 I was diagnosed with scoliosis. Now, back then my two favorite hobbies were reading and playing the violin, but I'd always have issues like if I wanted to read my books in my bed, after about 20 minutes I'd just be in excruciating pain. Or if I wanted to play my violin, I'd be sitting in orchestra and the teachers would get mad because I couldn't sit up straight. So after a while we got a little concerned, so we decided to go visit the doctor, see what he had to say. And he said I might possibly have scoliosis and referred me to Dr. DeVito. So a few weeks later, we met with Dr. DeVito, and he confirmed that I had about a 37-degree moderate scoliosis curve. So he then said it wasn't too severe to have surgery, so he decided to put me in a back brace that I would just wear every night. So every night I would just, wear that. It was very uncomfortable though, and whenever I would go to friends' houses for sleepovers, I'd always have to explain to them why I had the brace, scoliosis, all of that. Not fun. So after about 2 years of it, and it was becoming more and more uncomfortable, I opted to have scoliosis surgery. And I talked with my parents, and then we talked with Dr. DeVito, and he agreed to do the surgery. So I got all prepared for it. The night before, I had to take all these medicines. I had to wash out my mouth, no makeup for the next day. Very nerve-wracking. But we went into the surgery, and they gave me this crazy gas that just knocked me out, and I was laughing at all the pictures in the room and knocked me straight out. Next thing I knew, I woke up and I was out in the recovery room, and they just said, push a button, you'll feel painless. Now, after that, about a couple weeks, I kind of don't really remember anything because I was so out of it. I just know they kept trying to tell me to walk more and more and just walk. And I know people came to visit me, don't really remember much, but I know after about 3 to 4 weeks after the surgery, I woke up and it's kind of like I'd just woken up from a long dream, and I was like, oh, my back doesn't hurt that much. This is weird. Kind of like it though. So I realized that the surgery had healed me, and we went to the doctor and he said that I had 100% success of the surgery and that there was a zero degree curve. That was perfectly normal now, and it felt awesome. So, yeah.
Our daughter Virginia was diagnosed with scoliosis after her 13-year-old checkup visit to her pediatrician. Her father and I were totally and completely shocked. After further testing, we were referred to Dr. Dennis DeVito at Children's Orthopedics of Atlanta for treatment. Virginia was found to have a 37-degree curve, which, while not extremely serious, was not minor either. She wore a back brace for 2 years, and then finally she herself opted to have scoliosis surgery. We were nervous about the surgery, particularly the morning of the surgery, but we were hoping that Virginia could avoid a lifetime of back problems. The surgery took a little longer than expected, but it all came out just fine. I was able to stay with her every night at the hospital during her 5-night stay. She was pretty much out of it and doesn't have any memory of all of her visitors, but I cannot express how important it is to have family, friends, and church come and support you at this time. It really means a lot to the family, if not to the patient. But of course, afterward, I think she really understood how wonderful everyone had been to her. When she came home, that was the tough part. We had about 4 weeks of emotional ups and downs, ice packs, a lot of physical discomfort, but as time passed, she got better and better. We knew she was recovering, but it's just really hard to watch your child be uncomfortable. The good news is our next follow-up visit to Dr. DeVito, we learned that her back was completely and perfectly straight. Absolutely wonderful.
When my sister had scoliosis surgery, it affected me both mentally and physically. I'm not going to say it was easy. I mean, having to get her stuff and listening to her gripe all the time, but in the long run, it was worth it. Watching her go through this experience opened my eyes to the importance of getting screened for scoliosis.
The way we treat scoliosis, if it's a mild curve, we don't make any real restrictions in your activity, and we just sort of observe it and make sure it doesn't get bigger. Medium-sized curves sometimes require bracing, and a brace is used to prevent the curve from getting bigger, not necessarily does it make it go away. Large curves, which are generally more than 40 degrees, 45 degrees, occasionally require surgical intervention. The surgery for scoliosis has changed over the years, realizing that the first operations for scoliosis to get rid of it really didn't happen to the early 1960s. And this involved using what was called a Harrington rod. And a lot of people have heard that word. We don't use Harrington rods anymore, but it's only been about 60 years of progress with operating on curves. The goals of surgery for those few kids that need that are to prevent the curve from getting bigger. And we call that a fusion. We do a fusion, which is a way to get the bones to link together so that they can't curve anymore. We use the rods to help get the fusion. We've found, though, as we get better and better at doing this kind of surgery, and as our rods get better, we've found ways to make the curve smaller, or we correct the curve as much as we can, in addition to getting the fusion. So the first goal is a fusion. The second goal is to make the curve smaller, and that's what we use the rods for. And of course, you want to do it all safely. I'd say modern spine surgery has become safer because now we can monitor the nerves. So as we correct the deformity, we make sure that the spine likes what we're doing. So that's pretty much kind of what the evolution of taking care of scoliosis has been. Monitoring those kids that don't need anything but observation, identifying those curves that are going to likely get bigger and try to use a brace to prevent them from getting bigger, and those few that maybe less than 1% that get big enough to require surgery, we now have better tools, better implants, better rods to do that so that the recovery is less involved. For example, when we used to do the surgery, you'd go in a body cast for 6 weeks and then a brace maybe for 6 months. Now we don't use any of that because our implants are so strong that we don't have to do that. So it's maybe made it a little bit better. Hospitalization, we used to say 6 weeks of bed rest, and then it would take you 6 months to get your strength back. Now we average just 3 days in the hospital. So I think there's been some progress. Who knows what the future will hold? Maybe if we can identify a curve early, we'll have a way to treat it without relying on surgery.
I honestly believe that having scoliosis surgery made Virginia a better, stronger, and much more compassionate person. We were very blessed to have Dr. Dennis DeVito, Children's Orthopedics of Atlanta, and Children's Healthcare of Scottish Rite as our medical providers. They gave us wonderful care. We are very, very blessed in the Atlanta area to have such excellent medical care for scoliosis.
I just want to thank Dr. DeVito and all of the Children's Healthcare Scottish Rite for helping me out through this whole surgery and the scoliosis process. And to anyone who's listening, I just want to say that I think that this decision to do the surgery was an amazing decision on my part, and that although the journey was a very difficult process, in the long run, I think it was very beneficial.